What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Rams Brothers. I'm your host, Dean, and I'm joined, as always, by my brother and the other great host of this show, Nick. And Nick, it's been a little while. It's been a couple of weeks. OTAs are underway. We're in the final week of OTAs and some other top-line Rams news. But first and most importantly, how are you, my good brother?
I'm good. It's good to be back on the horn with
Sure
you.
is.
Yeah, things are good. There hasn't been a lot of football news that has come across my feed. I think everybody's talking about NBA Finals or NHL playoffs. Go Cats! So it's been fun.
Go Cats. Go. Are you Nuggets? You Nuggets or you rooting Heat?
I got my rent this month on the Nuggets. So
I'm a Himmy Butler guy. I'm gonna live and die by Jimmy Buckets. That's my guy. Yeah, but that's what it is. It's the beginning of June. It's the finals. It's the Stanley Cup. There's not a ton of Rams news. Our last episode, we talked about a potential gambling guide if you want to kind of guide yourself through. Some fun updated lines like comeback player of the year everybody was really interested in. Damar Hamlin's going to win that award just for stepping on the field. Like he's minus 500. So Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford kind of out on that conversation. But as the weeks transpire, we'll be able to see like over under rushing yard totals, receiving yard totals, touchdowns, all that other stuff. Some other fun props, and there'll be individual props per games that we cover, as always, because Uncle Nicky's gambling guide is always the most useful throughout the season. Over 500 every single year, right? Dating back 5-6 years. But now
I was below 500, but every other year above.
Just like what were the Rams in 2019? Were they also below 500 that year?
Like
it was the year they missed the playoffs, and
yeah,
it was the year they missed the playoffs and got dismantled by the Ravens in their mustard uniforms. I think in the Coliseum. Was it the final home game of the Coliseum that season?
Yeah, final color rush game as well.
Yeah. If anybody has that towel, it's a good one. But yeah, some top line Rams news. So Leonard Floyd finally. Oh, there you go. Nick's got it on disposal.
I have Leonard, a million towels right here.
Yeah, Nick's if you need to hit up Nick, he's selling towels for $50 a piece. Cold hard cash. Yeah, but Leonard Floyd might be looking for a couple of souvenirs, maybe some Rams towels. He's no longer with the Rams. The Rams released him 3 months ago to take the dead cap hit for this season and not extend it over 2 seasons. They could have waited until after June 1st and ate it over 23 and 24, but decided to eat it all now. So the Leonard Floyd news is interesting, right? He signs a 1-year deal with the Buffalo Bills, partners him up with Traven Howard, Von Miller, Taylor Rapp, and David Edwards, who are all previous Rams who are now with Buffalo. And they were seemingly really interested in Odell Beckham Jr. before he signed with the Ravens. So I guess I'll just ask you on the spot, what do you kind of think that this methodology means in the NFL? Like, are you just kind of trying to copy paste and get into that 1-year Super Bowl window? Or do you think this team is still trying to build a dynasty? Because it's like, what do you do? If you're the Bills, you want to try to win a Super Bowl. Like, no matter what happens, like, you need to do it. So
I don't think the Bills are built for that right now, honestly, because what the Rams did hadn't worked in the NFL ever. Never, ever before had it ever worked. And
I guess the only example you could use is maybe the year prior with Brady, but still, it's an anomaly because it's Tom Brady.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, honestly, that team was such a quarterback away for so long. I don't even know, like, because it was him and Gronk they brought in, really.
Right.
They're not like, they didn't get Von Miller and OBJ and like add and Stafford all in the same year. Like, I still think what the Rams did is 1 in a million chance of doing that.
And successfully winning the Super Bowl in that situation too. It just defies all odds. Yeah,
so much had to go their way. The Super Bowl was at home. They didn't have to face the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Like, they were the 4 seed. Like, they really didn't, like, they got a lot of breaks that year. Yeah. And you got to get lucky to win a Super Bowl. In a lot of cases, in a lot of pieces, there has to be luck along the way. The ball has to bounce your way. What have you? And I just don't see. I think that's what the Bills are trying to do right now, and I don't think that's prolonged success. I think they're behind offensively. I think Josh Allen needs to rework kind of his entire mindset. They have a defensive coach, which the defense wasn't really anything to bring home about last year.
So true.
So, and I think they still think that they're cream of the crop in the NFL. And hey, you didn't even make it to the AFC championship last year.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you have to be consistent.
You got to get to that point. So I don't know. I like it for them, but it seems like a short term goal kind of thing where that usually just doesn't work in the NFL.
That right, exactly. Yeah, and I guess you have a quarterback that's, you're going to have under contract for a longer period of time. They feel like they're built, they have a new stadium coming out in a couple of years that they just broke ground on. So there's some future things I think they're looking forward to. Leonard Floyd just on a 1-year deal, though. That to me means that they're trying to win it this year, right? You're trying to get together a team this year. You're going to try to add as many 1 year. It's the Howie Roseman methodology with the Philadelphia Eagles, same way that he did last year. And the same way that a lot of really good GMs do throughout the season when they feel like they're a couple of players away. So maybe Leonard Floyd is one of those 2-3 pieces that they feel like can really get them over the top. And we know the pass rush wins Super Bowl. This one actually won a Super Bowl 2 seasons ago. So I think in theory, it very much does make sense. I felt like it was between them and the Chargers to lock up Leonard Floyd. But now that that's done, we know.
Leonard what do you think? Like, do you think that they are primed to be Super Bowl champs this year?
I mean, you got to get through Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes, and also Aaron Rodgers. So
well, hopefully they can kind of knock each other out. But yeah, I mean, like if the Bengals are your biggest threat,
I thought the last 2 seasons was their best opportunity to win a Super Bowl. And I thought 2 years prior, they should have traded for Von Miller when the Rams decided to, because they were very much one of those 2 teams that were in contention to bring in Von Miller. And the Rams were the one that stepped up and won the prize. So that's the difference of winning the Super Bowl and going to the AFC Championship, losing, or getting to the Super Bowl and losing. To me, is a great pass rush.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, most of the time, more than anything else, what wins you the Super Bowl is the defense. So
yeah.
Look at the Eagles. They just needed
They needed a solid surface, right?
Yeah.
They needed their pass rush was there. They're just falling all over themselves.
Right.
So what else is going on with OTAs, Nick? Because we're in the final week of OTAs, as we mentioned. So a lot of rookies in this 2023 group and undrafted players, as we know. So, for example, Jordan mentioned in one of her latest articles that they take a charter bus from the hotel/apartment cluster to Cal Lutheran, which is where their practice facility is, every single day instead of using their usual 10-person van. So a literal charter bus versus just a 10-person shuttle that, they're in this whole Ram situation. This, as you're writing this, I'm thinking to myself, the draft was unprecedented. The day 3 7-hour time block that I spent sitting in front of my TV watching who they were going to select after the 4th and 5th and 6th rounds. It's just such a unique situation. It's really interesting to see how all these players are kind of coming together. But they said that the onboarding process holistically is slow, emphasis on slow. It's an onboarding process for everybody. Everybody has to know how to figure out how to play with one another. And also, we have to make sure that nobody's swimming, right? Because that's the one call out from offensive coordinator Matt LaFleur was, we have a really good eye on who's swimming, who's sinking, and who feels like they can kind of handle the material. Everybody has to be able to execute without spending too much time thinking about that really complex playbook that Sean McVay lays out to everybody. So, it's the slow and steady wins the race. You want to make sure everybody's on the same page. Just time.
Sinking and swimming. I like that. Everything that has come out of LaFleur has been great in my book. It's like he's got like a little notepad of like these like really smart ways of just saying standard stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I agree too. It's like,
love that.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be somebody that's pretty quick on your feet when you work with Sean McVay. And, that's what he saw with Kevin O'Connell. That's why the two of them got along so well. And you see him goes on and gets a head coaching job, which I'm sure is the same thing he wants to do for Matt LaFleur. But also, it's
going to happen.
Yeah, and I think
depending on this year and next
depending on this year and how much the offense truly evolves was my one thought. And it's also how the offensive line is able to kind of come together because Matt LaFleur is it Mike LaFleur? Which one's the brother? Matt or Mike?
Mike. We have Mike.
It's Mike. I keep saying Matt. Mike he has a pretty interesting job because he's not calling plays, right? He has McVay and Stafford to lean on. They're the ones that are responsible primarily for building the game plan with LaFleur's insight, but making adjustments in real time, like that's all stuff he's going to get minimal blame for. I feel like where we all really want to see it evolved and taken to the next step is a group of offensive linemen who under new offensive line coach Ryan Wendell, we all have confidence that can kind of come together. Zach Cromer's still in the building. And if all that stuff doesn't work, that's what happens. That's when LaFleur gets the finger pointed at him, similar to how Liam Cohen got the finger pointed at him over the past couple of seasons, right? It's like if it doesn't pan out, if the offensive line is struggling and there's no newness to scheme. There's no innovation that's happening. Obviously, Sean McVay has introduced innovation year over year over year, and he needs assistance. He needs somebody to be able to kind of come in and bounce ideas off of, which is why we always talked about, building up that room, making sure that that offensive coaching room is always filled with players that have tons of experiences and coaches that have NFL level experience, not guys that came from college programs like Kevin Carberry and Liam Cohn. It's guys that have true NFL experience and can add value to conversations.
I want to say as well, just to add on what we think LaFleur can bring to the table. I think second half adjustments is going to be huge because
absolutely.
Throughout his entire tenure with the Rams, that's one thing that is a blemish on the McVay record because it seems time and time again they just kind of continue to run out the same kind of stuff, whether it was working or not, hoping that.
And you know what? When I remember one night we were watching, you and I were watching the Peyton Manning, Eli Manning take or Manning cast, whatever the hell it was called, and Payne was talking about second half adjustments and why he feels like that really doesn't exist. Like he was talking about, like, we have a game plan. We roll out the game plan. There's no adjustments to be made at the second half. The game plan is the game plan. You have to be able to make some adjustments, innovations, audibles on the fly. But for the most part, it's concrete. I do think, though, that adding another young mind that has the ability to be a head coach in LaFleur, you could at least tinker with the game plan in the second half. You could try out some things that you've previously introduced in OTAs or training camps or whatever it may be, because what do you really have to lose at this point? You got to kind of throw some darts and take some risks to be able to give yourself a chance to win.
Do you think in the room they feel as lax as we do? And maybe I'm not speaking for both of us, but I'm just speaking for myself, where they spent all the effort to win a Super Bowl. They won it. And now, like, I'm okay with them taking a couple years to kind of, get the machine rolling again. I wonder if that's how they kind of see the season as well, or if they're like, no, we got to bring the thunder every night.
I don't know. I think for as relaxed as you and I are, I think they're kind of the same way. Like when you hear Raheem Morris talk, we just heard some press conferences from Ryan Wendell, or no, it was Chase Blackburn and Raheem Morris and LaFleur. And really kind of what you heard from Raheem Morris was like there's a lot of young guys in this building. It's a really great opportunity. Everybody's kind of walking around optimistically. Everybody wants to help one another. There's no real swagger or I guess personality that's going to negatively deter anybody, right? Like the core is the core. It's Stafford, Donald, and Kupp. And everybody knows that. And everybody else is kind of competing for a position. So everybody below those three players are kind of walking around optimistically, hoping that they could do something that would impress a coach and earn themselves a starting job. And I think that the coaches all feel that same way. And it was kind of what Les Snead brought up in one of his press conferences over the offseason was, it's so interesting to see how Sean McVay walked around in 2017 when he was a 31-year-old head coach, had no real true NFL experience outside of obviously working with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Washington Commanders. But there wasn't any head coaching experience. There wasn't real experience in terms of leading a 53-man roster. And I feel like now that he's gotten through all the hard parts of his career, getting married, getting engaged, getting married, winning a Super Bowl, having an arch rivalry with Kyle Shanahan, and contemplating retirement, like all of these things have kind of come up on his mind. But now all of those things are behind him. So I feel like they're very much seasoned to be able to implement some really interesting things into their game plan that'll help them win games.
And I like how he said, he was like, this isn't going to be a story next year. You know what I mean? Like, I'm committed to doing this. It was a whole, like a 5-day kind of a story, because he came out pretty quickly and was like, I'm not going to retire. And then just to speak on 31-year-old McVay versus now and Raheem, just a lot of, it feels like there are clear veterans who have been poised and in these positions to now, lead by example, point to history that they have made. And then, like, if you follow our path, like, we understand and know how to win. So while this year I think they can take as lax, I think going forward after this year, they're probably back into let's be like a competent LA team and go after a championship.
all speed ahead in 2024. I think their cap space as of right now is over 50 million. They're
Yeah.
like under 2 million for this season. So it's really kind of going to be like a work with what you got, unless you're going to bring in a veteran player under $1 million and you could sign him on and, have him come in similar to the Leonard Floyd situation. I don't think that the terms in terms of the dollar value came out for that contract yet, but it'll be interesting to see what he gets. But yeah, Nick, it's like, it's an interesting time to be a Rams fan. I do think that there are so many rookies, undrafted players in this group that we could all be pleasantly surprised that 9 or 10 of them, end up earning starting roles and can be players that earn their second contracts that could turn into potential leaders. And that's kind of what we have laid out for this episode, right? The back half of this episode, we wanted to focus on 3 players that we feel like could be potential leaders and earn a second contract or a third contract with the Los Angeles Rams. Because of right now, Nick, if you look at everything that's coming out of OTAs, you have to take it all with a grain of salt. Like, all offensive linemen have been a full go, great sign, with the exception of Logan Bruss, who we've all been keeping an eye on because the knee is still recovering, and Joe Noteboom, same deal with the Achilles. Like, we hear really good things about Puka Nakua's ability to catch McVay's eye. McVay actually pulled him aside last week, had a conversation with him about his release off the line of scrimmage. It was working with him there. Stafford really likes what he's seeing so far. He seems like he's the happiest person ever to be in Horns. So great signs from Puka Nacua. Kobe Turner, they said they felt like he was playing bigger than what they originally thought. So the conductor is already making a really good impression on Eric Henderson and the rest of the defensive line. The Stenson Bennett situation, Nick, like, as much as we want him to be a leader, he's already 35 years old. It's going to be a little bit difficult when you don't get play calls through your signal in college when you're in Georgia in a pro-style offense for 5 seasons. So that's all. They said they used hand signals, which is what our coaches used to use way back in the day in Pee Wee football. Was this was 10, this was 20. Single call to, you know what I mean? Like, then you use your gaps and your holes, and it's all pretty simple math. But this is now
tagged up. This was a ball.
Steal.
Steal.
Right. Steal. So yeah, that's what's difficult about it, is like you're kind of being onboarded into a brand new, real, true pro style offense. Hash marks are different, throws are longer, plays are longer developing. You have to really be entrusting in your offensive line. So that's what's really difficult about it. You got to work with Bright Rippin, which it sounds like he's working off the side with the Matthew Stafford. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you got Darion Kendrick being called out for his sense of urgency in a positive way from Raheem. Talk about who's going to play the star position between Jacoby Durant and Sean Jolly, which I'm sure is still an ongoing conversation. Likely going to be Durant, but we'll see. And then some other guys had some interceptions. Richard LeCount, who I'm not very familiar with. I think he was on the practice squad last year. And same with Cameron McCutcheon, who I'm pretty sure was the other McCutcheon who was on the practice squad for last year. But Donald and Cup were both out due to family reasons for the most recent phase of OTAs. But all signs point them to being around in the final week. Hopefully, they could at least kind of show some face and work on some drills internally with the group. So that's what we're dealing with from OTAs. And then the 3 guys that we feel like, because we did this last year.
Yeah.
Nick,
do you remember who they were? I remember only Cam Akers as our guy that we thought could really show true life and become, earn his next contract. And that didn't really happen, as they talked about trading him for the majority of the season.
It was probably our worst pick because he was in the doghouse by week 5 or week 6. My favorite pick, who I was extraordinarily confident in, was Joe Noteboom.
Yeah,
I thought he was going to be I thought he was going to be one of the future faces of the franchise. Replacing Andrew Whitworth, had a really, really solid foundation. Playing interior, exterior over the first 3-4 seasons of his career. Optimistic to give him a really big contract. And he was banged up in camp. He was banged up prior to the season starting, and then some wear on that knee led to the Achilles. And that was a guy that I just had a ton of confidence in, just kind of being the next man up. But injuries, durability, it's the best availability, is just being on the field and being present. Andrew Whitworth was so great at that when he was here. Rob Havenstein has been so great at that when he's been here for the past, 8-9 years. It's going to be Rob Havenstein's 10th season, 9th season.
I think 9th.
Yeah. So, and then the other guy that we brought up in terms of who else we really had faith in was Jordan Fuller, right? So Jordan Fuller was coming off of I think it was an ankle surgery. He was featured on Behind the Grind. So I had some confidence that Fuller was going to come back. But then the Rams had drafted 2 safeties a couple of months prior in Quentin Lake and Russ Yeast, who I assume Quentin Lake's eventually going to be his predecessor. And Russ Yeast is going to be replacing Taylor Rapp, who's in Buffalo. And then they also drafted Jason Taylor this year. So it's like, I guess we were 0 for 3.
Yeah, but that was last year was unprecedented times, which I know is a term that everybody wants to use now that it's in our vernacular from COVID.
Yeah,
but truly unprecedented times. We everybody was hurt, and the season was just like over before it even got a chance to start up. So we had like 3 games in the season before we were like, oh, we're boned.
That's what made it so difficult. And I think Ernest Jones and Van Jefferson were some of our honorable mentions, which both would have been resoundingly better options.
And you know what? Van Jefferson, honorable mention this year.
Well, you know what? The reason why we didn't want to list him for this one was because we were like, is Van a pro? Remember we were having that conversation? Like he's the guy right now. Cooper Kupp's not in the building. It's Van Jefferson, right? Yeah. So Van Jefferson is maybe already in that leadership role. Ernest Jones seems like it's very, very clear and obvious that he's going to be the one calling signals on the defensive side of the ball. He's going to be the Mike linebacker. He's replacing Bobby Wagner. Probably the best thing that could have ever happened for his career development was bringing in Bobby Wagner for a year.
So kind of crazy how I totally forgot that our boy Taylor Rapp is now on the Bills too. So the Bills just kind of are, poaching the LA Rams, really going for that one ring. So
I would do the same thing.
Yeah.
I would be selling my soul for a ring if I were
there. As a Bills fan, that's all you want is just one. So absolutely. I think they owe it to try to continuously go all in every single season.
Yeah, they should be doing it for the next 5 seasons as long as Josh Allen's healthy and capable.
Do you have just before we go into the 3 players that we think are going to move forward? Do you have any insight on this Stephon Diggs thing and how he might not be happy there?
No, I haven't heard that. No,
I just remember him being visibly upset in the Bengals game.
How many different organizations has he been with so far? We know he was with Minnesota. He was with
Buffalo, and one other.
I think so. Yeah, whoever drafted him. I'm trying to remember who drafted Stephon Diggs. No, I haven't heard that he's unhappy.
Yeah, no. It just seemed like it would have been a perfect spot for OBJ. But
yeah.
Where did he go? I forget now.
I think Diggs was drafted by the Vikings. OBJ went to the Ravens.
Ravens, right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Love that for him.
They shored up their wide receiver core. If you're looking for props or receiving yards or touchdowns on any player, Odell Beckham Jr. is available across the board.
Yeah.
If you want Odell Beckham Jr.
Lamar Jackson, MVP. I'm making that pick right now.
Yeah, it's not a bad bet at all. So the 3 players that we mentioned that we want to focus on primarily, number 1, take on a leadership role, is Jacoby Durant. Let's see if I can go.
Boom.
So Jacoby, the group holistically, virtually no leadership or veteran presence, right? With the losses of Troy Hill and Jalen Ramsey. I don't have any confidence in Robert Rochelle. I mean, some may. I felt like he flashed a little bit during his rookie season, but then he's not even able to kind of contribute to the special teams unit, which was really, really demoralizing to watch. I thought he was a player that scored really highly in terms of an RAS score, comparable to Jalen Ramsey in terms of physical traits. But Raheem mentioned, as we talked about, Durant and Sean Jolly are manning that star role in Ramsey's absence. I think that Jacoby Durant, talk about the personality. It's better than anybody else's. He could be one of the faces of your organization. He's extremely versatile. He saw him play many, many positions in his rookie season, bouncing all over the field to step in for injury. He was a little banged up, but still played really well in his time on the field. Flashed more than most rookies at that position, showed a ton of promise, and I feel like he's poised for another big leap in 2023. So Kobe Durant is number 1 on my list for, being the next player that is everybody's favorite Ram, right?
Yeah.
Like players that you can kind of rally around and has a great nickname in the Land Shark and a familiar last name. I just think that it's a guy that's everybody's going to just kind of grow to love if they don't already.
I forget what the nickname was.
Land Shark.
Black Reaper, I think is what I tried to coin because it's like Kobe Durant.
Kobe and Durant, yeah, which
or
I also love, but it sounds like
also.
Yeah, it sounded like he already had the nickname.
Land Shark's cooler, I think. The other ones are too difficult to kind of wrap your head around, and you're also stealing from other people's nicknames.
Right.
I love the Conductor, and I love the Land Shark. I mean, he's in the best position, I think, to step up, because when you lose a Jalen Ramsey, people, it's going to show. So if it's not like the biggest blemish, and you got somebody like Durant who can like kind of track down a couple INTs on the season, which is where Ramsey always kind of wasn't ever his real strong suit. So
no, but towards the end, he was making plays. Like in the beginning of last season, I remember that Atlanta game. He made a really good play to end the game. The year prior against Detroit and Jared Goff. Yeah, so if he can make some explosive plays on the defense side of the ball, cause some havoc, a couple interceptions, maybe one for a touchdown, like that's a guy that everybody's going to grow to love.
Yeah, it would be the quickest new face, because I think they're dying to have more people on the podium right now outside of McVay himself and then the big three.
The big three. Yeah, then it's Ernest Jones, right? Is that next guy who's probably on the podium below those three. And then you might argue you go Van Jefferson. You go Rob Havenstein, maybe.
I think I would go Havenstein.
Yeah,
personally, because it just from tenure alone.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I do want to hear him speak more before he's gone, because it feels like his tenure has just been underappreciated. Yeah. Right, he's just been a sturdy block as a right tackle for the last 8-9 seasons, and it's not a player I want to see go. When you have a guaranteed starter at a position coming out of the last year for the Rams' offensive line, you take it. The next guy is Coleman Shelton, right? So he's coming off of, I think they just signed him to a 1-year deal, so they brought him back.
Love the blue on blue.
And Nick loves the blue on blue. I do too. I think it's a great look. I also think that the way that Coleman Shelton kind of fits into this equation is him earning a starting center job, playing your ass off, and being an example for other interior players on the roster that are also undrafted, who are still trying to make a name for themselves, similar to how Alaric Jackson did it last season before the blood clots. That offensive line was in shambles last year, and Matthew Stafford is going into his 15th season. Like, that is absolutely ridiculous. Like, I very easily could have put Alaric Jackson in this position for Coleman Shelton, but I feel like we've gone years and years without the Rams really having a leadership player as an interior offensive lineman. Like, it hasn't happened. You've been hoping that Brian Allen is going to step up. You saw Austin Corbett here in the Super Bowl season, which is probably the best example of that. Previously, Roger Saffold. So you've had some really good interior players in the past, but it feels like since Austin Corbett left, we've been trying to fill a vacancy, which is why you go back to Wisconsin and you try to draft a Logan Bruss, and you try to, relive the magic. And David Edwards, weird concussions from last year, had a couple in a row over like a 3-week span, ends up in Buffalo also. So it's so strange. This is a really good peak. I want to give Roberto Clemente on Twitter a shout out, because this is just an incredibly well-compiled list of the way that the Rams' offensive line shook out last season. So I talked about a consistent block, Nick. Look at Rob Havenstein all the way at the top. Played all 17 games. Not one other player did that. Coleman Shelton was right behind him at 12, and Alaric Jackson was right behind him at 8. So those are kind of, your 3 guys that you feel it's almost a necessity to let them start, at least to begin the season, because they showed you a lot in their time, in a limited period of time, but still a time where there was so much turmoil going on. And then games played by position, like Ty Nsekhe's not coming back. Matt Sakura is not coming back. David Edwards is gone. Bobby Evans is gone. So Oday Oboshi was a guy that they signed off of the scrap heap. So I really, if you're Coleman Shelton, I'm saying to myself, A, I'm going to win the job outright over Brian Allen. And then B, I'm just going to be just a unanimous example to all undrafted players in the system on how to work your way up, earn a second contract, and become that guy and become a leader.
Shelton, Havenstein, Whitworth, you want them all to be in the same breath when you're talking about like great Rams offensive linemen.
Totally.
And yeah, I mean, he's really got a shot this year to kind of propel it over the top, especially because last year it seemed like every play was getting blown up before it could even like
and then it leads to a spinal contusion for Matthew Stafford, and then his season, his career is in jeopardy. It's like way too much is going on. So based on that, here's what I'm starting it in terms of the beginning of the season, left to right. Alaric Jackson at left tackle, Steve Avila at left guard, or Steve Avila. We're still getting down the pronunciation of the rook at left guard. Brian Allen starting at center. Coleman Shelton starting at right guard, and Rob Havenstein starting at right tackle. And then you really have solid depth to lean on with players like Joe Noteboom and Logan Bruss and Trayman Akram and AJ Curie. And the problem is I just feel like they're going to have to let Noteboom play because of the contract, and they're paying both Brian Allen and Coleman Shelton. So inevitably, there are going to be 3 players that play, especially early on in the season. But it's just going to be a matter of who the best 5 are going to play, as our offensive coordinator said. I feel like they're a little bit more stable now. Yeah, go ahead.
I really liked LaFleur being like, yeah, nobody's guaranteed. It doesn't matter who's getting paid. We're going to put out the best guys on the field. Yeah,
there's an element to that, but it's also like at this point, play whoever wants to step up and play. That's what you have to do. And they have more. They have more experience too, right?
Yeah.
Like from a coaching perspective, Ryan Wendell, NFL experience. No longer Kevin Carberry. And then Aaron Cromer, Ryan Wendell's a disciple of Aaron Cromer, and Zach Cromer is his son, still with the Rams' organization. So pretty good stability there. I can't get worse. That's all we could say.
Yeah. Move on to the tight end position.
Yeah, last but not least.
Bryson Hopkins, our boy. Higbee on the last year of his deal, kind of thought that he was out of the building, honestly, by this point. I mean, there's still time. There's still plenty of time. But still, it's time to start thinking about the future of the tight end position. Bryson Hopkins has had 2 moments, seemingly. The block on the 4th down jet sweep and the PED suspension from last year. He's in year 4. He's played 24 games in 3 years. If it isn't him, it has to be Hunter Long or Davis Allen. So your guess is as good as mine. Personally, I think the Hunter Long thing could be completely preseason is all we see from him.
Sure.
But I want to see one of them emerge as like Stafford's blanket and be the 3-down tight end. Because I don't know. It's just Higbee never really, he's been with the organization a really long time now. One of the longest tenure guys at this point. And outside of that one Eagles game, where he scored 3 touchdowns, there aren't many moments where you think back like the great Tyler Higbee moment,
Yeah, but part of his job is doing the dirty work and playing in line and being able to block. But you want somebody that, no, you're totally right. It's not a flashy player. And it seems like the teams that have these game-breaking tight ends, the Mark Edwards or Mark Andrews, the Travis Kelce's, the Dallas Goddards, right? Yeah. Those are the guys who end up, in the big show towards the end. Although the Rams just did it without Tyler Higbee and Bryson Hopkins being a starter in the Super Bowl and executing on a key jet sweep block. So if you can get the most out of him, he could stay healthy for an entire season. I mean, he hasn't shown enough, I don't think, for him to earn a second contract with the Rams, but he's at least a player who could step up into a leadership role and try to kind of recreate and reshape his career in the NFL. And if it's not him, Nick, Davis Allen has the best tight end name in football, as you mentioned. He's going to be a free agent on your fantasy waiver wire all the time. So
I think it's going to be – I'm more excited for these preseason matchups more than I've ever been. You have Stenson Bennett throwing the Hunter Long.
Lance McCutcheon.
Yeah, could be really, really fun. So
yeah,
I'm definitely going to go to a couple, or at least one of those SoFi games. Probably the one where they play the Chargers, because it'll be like 3 years in a row where I've gone to every single one.
Yep, and then we'll be out there
if that's what they're going to release. But who knows?
And then that's coming July. Apparently, is when we get the jersey news. Sometime in July.
Who's telling me this? Who are your sources?
That's my source. I have an inside source on Twitter.
July.
It's you never know. You never know, but July is what we're seeing.
It's going to be like a different shade of blue and like white, and it's going to be so lame. Ugh.
Yeah, the original Rams dark blue, the original like darker shade of blue, and then the white that goes back to the original white and blue helmets and the white and blue jerseys from the 50s or the 60s. What I would want? I would want the white, the old school Deacon Jones, Merlin Olsen white with the blue instead of the blue with the white. Because I think the blue with the white goes back way, way further, and then the white with the blue is more like late 1950s, early 1960s.
Yeah, I just
see if
want
I can pull up
yellow.
see if I can pull up a quick picture.
I just want all yellow.
Say which one.
Nobody else has all yellow. No other team in the NFL. It'd be so
I
cool.
know. I feel like the Chargers have been talking about it. I'm going to show you.
The Chargers, the marketing team, is like 10 times better than the Rams. I'm sorry. I mean, not that that's like a huge deal. Like, who cares about that? You want to
No,
win
it doesn't. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Here, wait. Let me share my screen real quick. This is the jersey I'm talking about.
Yeah, let me see.
Can you see?
Oh, that would, yeah, but I just think white can be so boring. Like that's like, it looks like it's from the 1950s.
It does.
That with the with our current helmet would look horrible.
Unfortunately, but you'd be able to change the helmet. That's the
they're not going to change the type of spiral that it's going to be. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, who needs uniform talk? You hear it all day, every day.
Yeah, you sure do. We'll get it in a month, and it'll be just as fun as it always was. Make sure if you guys are enjoying the show, like and subscribe. Make sure that you guys let us know that you're enjoying the show. We got a lot more coming at you throughout the entire season. We'll have you covered throughout July and August, throughout the preseason, throughout the regular season. It's going to be a lot of fun. So stick with us.
Yes, please do. Like and subscribe, guys. It means so much.
Sure does. Love you guys. Thanks for listening. Peace. Go Rams.